as Annie said, thus far we have heard about the very fancy stuff and the NeuralPixel's future. But now I'm going to start with a basic introduction to NeuralPixel's hardware. But before that, I just want to sort of recap that the power of the NeuralPixels is really a lot of power is in the hardware, because NeuralPixels has high intensity, low impedance sites, and the signal is amplified and digitized at the base. And it has quite a small footprint. And these are all the sort of hardware features that allows us to have high yield, low noise recordings. And it's very easy actually to put together the hardware these days, thanks to the recently developed OneBox, with which you can literally just plug into your computer through a USB connection and be ready. So really the hardware consists of 4 parts: the probe, the head stage, the wire, and the computer interface, which, as I said, with the OneBox, things got very easy. So I'm going to first talk a bit more details about how you should think about planning your probe choice. But before that, I wanted to just clarify a couple of terminologies related to the probe. So each probe has electrodes or pixels or sites, out of which you have 960 or even more. But at least in the 1.0 and the 2.0, or the most commonly used versions, you can't record all of these electrodes together. And instead you need to connect, each electrode is connected to a channel. But numerous electrodes can be connected to the same channel, and you need to select which electrode you want to record from in a given recording channel. So to perform this selection, what you need to provide is basically an IMEC readout table, or IMRO table. Currently, you can already do that most of the in the GUI of most recording softwares, but you can also write your own code to write the IMRO table. And the electrodes that can be recorded together are called banks, or virtual banks. So for example, one possible configuration that's very commonly used is that you just record all the electrodes at the tip of the probe. However, there are other configurations are possible, but importantly, not all not all random configurations. But here there are a couple of other configurations that I'm just showing here. So for example, you can record a bit at the tip and another part at the second bank of the probe. An important consideration when you are selecting which probe you are hoping to use in your experiment is, of course, species. That is very obvious. But as Nick has mentioned before, another key aspect to think about is the anatomy, or the region that you are hoping to target. For example, if your region is very big along the dorsoventral axis, then it's the 1.0 probe that can span the biggest sort of area of 4 millimeter. But of course, but for example, with the 2.0 probe, you can specify a horizontal configuration, and so you can record more channels along the horizontal axis. Another sort of possibility, as Nick mentioned, is the ultra probe, but this really provides a much smaller coverage compared to the 1.2 and the 2.0 probes. And the neuron types that you want to record. So if you have denser electrode size, then you have more chance in detecting lower amplitude neurons. The obvious recommendation for chronic usage is the 2.0 probe, because of its low weight, and also because you can connect 2 probes per head stage. So if you want to record chronically, that's the probe that you should be choosing. There is a cost difference amongst the probes as well. I'm not sure that costs have changed a lot since last year, but there is some cost difference. Okay, so when you start preparing your probe, the most important thing is to test your probe before you insert it into any sort of brain. Preferentially touch the probe only with anti-static equipment, and just plug your probe in and run some BIST tests, which at least in SpikeGLX you can access via the Tools tab. And so this will tell you how good your probe is and what your baseline noise level, what your sort of baseline noise level is, which is sort of important to do before you insert it into the brain. The second thing that you would need to do is to mount the probe for usage. Now, this really depends on what kind of configuration you are using, whether you are recording acutely or chronically. But one important sort of consideration is that if you are recording acutely, then IMEC is already sharing probes where you can, where the dovetail that you need to have to sort of mount the probe on the stereotaxic rod is already put on the probe. So if you plan to only record acutely, then that is the sort of best choice for purchase. Typical issues when you are mounting the probe that you might face is that during fabrication there might be some debris. You can use some sort of sandpaper to get rid of that. And especially if you are targeting deep brain regions, one issue that you might face is there is sometimes a slight bend of the probe compared to the base. This you can try to sort of correct if you put if you are mounting your probe in Blu-Tack or in some sort of viscous sort of glue. But especially if you are targeting regions such as the SNR or something quite deep, then sort of beware that this might cause you some issues. As the last step when you are preparing your probe is sharpen the probe. This is a very important step because as you can see in this image, there is a considerable amount of difference when you are sharpening your probes versus not. And so a correctly sharpened probe can really reduce sort of the damage that you make when you are inserting, and it can just facilitate insertion. I'm not going to go through the steps of the sharpening, but you can read it off my slides later. Finally, there is the final important step is to solder the reference and the ground. And here, basically, the ground provides a reference point for the amplifier, whereas the reference electrode allows us to sort of cancel common mode noise through differential amplification. And there are several configuration options to do that. So the ground, there are two ground positions on the left side of the probe, and there are several reference electrodes that you can connect either externally on the right side of the probe, or you can use internal references as well. The most common way of doing it is that you short the ground and the reference electrode externally, or you use an external ground and you use the tip as the internal referencing. Here, a few practical tips is do not solder at constant high temperatures, so don't touch the probe for very long. And don't heat the flex cable, only heat the positions where you need to solder, so not in between. Okay, a final step that I will cover in this talk is the computer interface. So as I alluded to you before, currently the easiest, by far easiest solution, and if you are just starting with NeuralPixels, the solution that is probably the most recommended is to use the one box, which allows up to 2 head stages to be plugged in, and it also has a breakout port for other inputs. There are historic other solutions such as the PXI chassis, which if you have that, then you can watch a previous video of how to put that together. And if you want to have a sort of more flexible system, then there is the Onyx from OpenEFIS, which also allows you to have, for example, fiber photometry and to record better in freely moving animals. But what I'm going to recommend as the starting sort of interface is the OneBox, which you can very easily plug in with the USB to the computer. Here, one important sort of question that might come up is how to sync your other sort of sources of information with the electrophysiology. So, for example, if you have a camera or a wheel or some other sort of analog or digital inputs, how can you sync that? As I mentioned, the OneBox already has a breakout board where you can, I think, connect up to 26 maybe BNCs. But if for some reason that's not your preferred solution, then you can also send a sync pulse through the SMA connector of the OneBox here. If you, for example, record the data stream on another computer, here the most important thing is that that you send a pulse with random timings for easy recovery of your timings, which at least in my lab we usually generate with an Arduino. But all in all, currently the hardware is quite sort of simplified and easy to put together, especially if you, with the new OneBox. So I recommend everyone trying out the OneBox, and that's it. Thank you.